Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video, and I am back with these two sticks right here. So I bought these for 65 euros at a local media markt, and these are Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro 3200 16 18 18 36 1.35 volt DIMMs. So basically one of the most common and also slowest XMPs that you can buy. However, the backside of the DIMMs read as version 4.31, confirming that there are BDI chips in this kit. And, well, because BDI is the best overclocking chip, I thought, hey, maybe these are not too bad. Maybe this is actually like somewhat decent BDI. Well, I tested them, and if you watch the video, you know what happened. They are very much not very decent BDI. They are very weird, let's say. They were actually so weird that for a long time I thought this actually wasn't BDI. So after I finished that first video, I did some more testing, and I just... yeah, like they just started acting like they aren't BDI. So like after testing I found out, like I got them clocked a little bit higher, and I figured out some primary timings and some voltage tolerances, and what I saw was, so the primaries and the frequency that worked were 3600, 18, 22, 22, 42, and the stability got better when I lowered the voltage below 1.35 volts. That kinda sounds like C-die, doesn't it? So for a long time I thought that I had actually gotten C-die in these things, and the 4.31 was actually a 4.32 that has been mislabeled. Well, I spent some more time tweaking these and just kind of like just maxing them out, like seeing how far they can go, and then I decided to pop the heat spreaders off of them. So here, that's what a Vengeance Pro RGB DIMM looks like when the heat spreader is removed. And this way we can take a look at the chips themselves, and to my surprise it says 5WB, which is BDI. This is BDI. It's not C-die, this is BDI. This is just, yeah, your regular old made by Samsung BDI. However, it is a new version of BDI. As you can see, it says 5WB BCWE. And BCWE is the, it's the binning indicator that Samsung has. And according to what JDEC bin your memory is rated for, you're gonna get like one of those codes. And BCWE is the code for 3200 22 22 22 1.2 volts, which is the highest JDEC bin there actually is. So according to Samsung, these are the best BDI chips that they can make. And the interesting thing about that is that for a long time, like BDI is a fairly old chip. It's like the first 8 gigabit chip that Samsung ever made like available. There probably was like an M-die and an A-die at some point, but those were never like actually in production. But yeah, so like BDI is a fairly old chip, and because of that, like because JDEC 3200 is a fairly new standard, the chips can't really do it. Like BDI can't really do 3200 22 22 22 at 1.2 volts. It typically needs more voltage than that. But JDEC is always 1.2 volts, so you need to do it at that voltage in order to be JDEC rated for that. And well, Samsung would like to sell BDI chips at a higher JDEC bin because they can ask for more money for that from like data centers and corporations and whoever like runs their RAM at JDEC instead of XMP. Like Samsung sells chips without XMP profiles. They just sell green PCB sticks that don't have XMP. Like, yeah. And yeah, so BCWE is fairly new for BDI because the older BDIs just couldn't do that. And well, Samsung has changed their production somewhat to make their BDI chips hit that 3200 JDEC profile with a bit more consistency. And we don't know exactly what they did to their BDI production process in order to make that happen, but what we can tell from the overclocking behavior is they took something from the C-die production and put it into B-die production. Which is great for Samsung because now they can make B-die that can hit the 3200 JEDEC profile pretty reliably. Bad thing is, new B-die now behaves like C-die. Even worse so in some cases. So C-die is a chip that's known for two things. First of all, it's bad, and second of all, it has strong negative voltage scaling. So on C-die, well, they straight up die above 1.35 volts. That's also a thing it's known for. Like, C-die just likes to randomly drop dead every now and then. Sometimes even at 1.35 volts. It happened to me, and I know like a lot of other people it happened to as well. Like, don't buy C-die, just don't. But yeah, like to max out C-die, you usually need to like set your voltage between 1.32, 1.34, sometimes a little lower, around 1.3 volts. That's usually where you get your peak frequency and stability on C-die. Now, these new B-die chips right here, specifically my kit, this kit has a stability peak at 1.26 volts, and that's a very specific peak. Like 1.27 and 1.25 errors within the first 10 seconds. Like, very specifically 1.26 volts is where this is the most stable. So yeah, and that's also why I just couldn't get it to do more than XMP in the other video I did, because, well, it's B-die. B-die means you just push high voltage into it, and that's what I did. But, well, this new kind of B-die actually needs lower voltage to clock better. So yeah, so I went from 3200, 16, 18, 18, 36 to 3600, 18, 20, 20, 28. And yeah, it just kind of looks like C-die. Like, the frequency is not great, the primaries are not great. It's just kind of like C-die. And yeah, but when it comes to the subtimings on these, they are actually not too bad. Like, I maxed these out, I completely maxed out every single timing on these, and the actual performance you get from them, actually pretty decent. Like, it's not the same class as a high-end B-die kit, but this is also only about half the cost of a high-end B-die kit. And considering that, these are actually not too bad. Like, for like a Ryzen system, considering that these are maxing at 3600, pretty decent memory. Because on Ryzen you're not gonna go higher than like 3800 anyway. On Intel you kind of want to have something that clocks higher than this, but for like a Ryzen system, these are actually not too bad. So yeah, like, I guess you can buy these cheaper Corsair B-die kits. Just like be aware that it like kind of behaves like C-die now, because you're probably gonna get that newer B-die, because I guess the older B-die that like overclocks like actual proper B-die probably goes into like more expensive kits. Or at least like these chips specifically only should exist in 3200 XMPs, because at because XMPs are always 1.35 volts or higher, and these chips, because of their strong negative voltage scaling, don't do 3600 at 1.35 volts. So if you see like Corsair B-die at 3600, 1.35 volts, that might be a different version of B-die, but these 3200 kits at 1.35 volts with B-die, probably gonna be this BCWE stuff. And yeah, like it is. It's not literal C-die, but it behaves like C-die. So these are not like amazing overclocking sticks, but if you max them out, if you put in the time to max them out, the performance from them is actually kind of decent. And yeah, so like let's take a look at that. I'm gonna slot these in, we're gonna run some tests, and you're gonna see a comparison with some other profiles that I've also tested. So see you soon. So the test bench booted up. Let's go into BIOS. And I already have a pre-made profile for this. It's profile 6. And we're just gonna load that. And then run some times by CPU test. and also some Linpack a little bit later. I started using that for performance comparisons soon as well, because Linpack actually shows the difference in RAM performance even more than TimeSpy. However, it is a little bit exaggerated, which is why I'm still using TimeSpy. Like, TimeSpy is a lot closer to the actual real-world improvement you will be able to see. Linpack is a bit better for just showing like which RAM setting is faster. But yeah, so I've successfully managed to talk over the entire boot up process, and we should be in Windows any second now. Here we are. And yeah, so here's the timings again. So 3600, 18, 20, 20, 28. It does run at 1T command rate, which, well, it's 3600. It's not really that hard to do. TWR went all the way down to 4. TRFC is also like CDI. Like, if this was like, you know, the older kind of BDI, which is usually the BCPB bin. BCW is the new stuff, BCPB is usually the older stuff. There's also some other bins, but most of the like high-end BDI kits use BCPB. On those kits you would expect this to do like 200 to 250 at 3600. This does 460, which is pretty much exactly the TRFC you would expect out of CDI at 3600. So this too is a timing that just kinda got CDI'd by Samsung. One nice thing is it does optimal RRDs and T4. On CDI, I'm not entirely sure if this always works. CDI might need 6 here, but this does 4, 4, 16, which is just the optimal thing to run, and these timings are very important for performance, like TRRD and T4. Just, if you can set them to 4, 4, 16, do it, even if it costs you several other timings. These are just the most important. These are set by the tertiaries. RTP is actually, well, this is a bit special because like RTP doesn't really exist on Intel CPUs. And every motherboard manufacturer has a different way of handling it, because there's a different timing that kinda does the same but isn't named RTP. And some boards set that timing if you set the RTP, and some motherboards don't, and you have to find a different setting. And I am not entirely sure what my Maximus 10 Apex does. So I didn't touch this one. So if you figure out how to set this, you might get this to like, I don't know, like 8, 7, something like that. But yeah, RTP on Intel is weird. CWL is 18, same as TCL. It didn't go lower than that, so we just leave it at that. TREFI is maxed out, as I've always been able to do now. CKE went all the way down to 0. And then as well for the tertiaries, like read, same group is 6, read, different group is 4, write, same group is 7, write, different group is 4. I kinda wish this did 6, but it doesn't. This just kinda needs 7, or you will get instability at some point. Read, writes both do 9, and then the write, reads are 31 and 25. Because this is 31, this is 7, because this is 25, this is 1. And then all the different rank and different DIMM timings are set to 0, because this is a 1 DIMM per channel and single rank setup. So yeah, that's just none of those timings, because we don't have a different rank or a different DIMM for each of the channels. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's close this down. And yeah, let's run some TimeSpy. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but I need to have my LAN cable plugged in for TimeSpy to work. That unfortunately means that Windows sometimes does something in the background, which sometimes messes with your score. I know what to expect from this, so if we have to rerun it, we just kind of have to do it. But yeah, I did rerun, like I did run this a couple times beforehand, so I know what score this is supposed to spit out. And yeah, so just doing like a live performance for you. I already know what the result of this is, unless Windows decides to be a problem. But yeah, I'm just gonna let this run now, and we'll see each other when we're done. . Yeah, that score is low. That's a low score. Okay, let's run it again. Alright, yeah, that's a proper score. So, we lost about 100 points in the first run due to just Windows variants. But yeah, this is about what I saw in the runs before. And that's pretty decent performance. So like, I'm on my 8700K at 5.3 gigahertz. And that's a pretty good score. Like, I only have 2 memory kits that are able to exceed 10,000 points. One of these is my very high-end Viper Steel B-Die kit, and the other one is my 2 OEM single-rank 4 gigabit E-Die sticks, both of which clock far above 4,000. And yeah, so like, for a kit running at 3600, that's a pretty good score. Like, yeah, like the primaries are not great, but the, well, except for TRFC, the sub-timings on this are pretty decent. Like, yeah, so it doesn't clock super high, or the primaries don't look that great, but the actual performance from this kit is pretty decent. Like, 9877. I have some other profiles here that I ran some other things. So this is my good B-Die kit, the really expensive ones. And yeah, they're like 300 points ahead. That's not that much. This is a 5-digit score, and they're only about 300 points ahead. Like, that is not that big of a difference. And then, where's the E-Die? Here, that's the other kit that can beat 10,000. You know? That's like around 100 points ahead. And that's at 4,300. So, like, these sticks are not too bad performance-wise. Like, it is not bad. And like, this is what it does at the XMP spec. You know? Like, yeah. Like, still the CPU's at 5.3. That's why it is a 9,000 score. But yeah, like, the difference from XMP to overclock on this profile, on this kit, is bigger than the difference from this kit maxed out to my really good B-Die maxed out. So, I think the performance is pretty decent. And let's also go to Linpack. I need to set my CPU 100 MHz lower for that, because Linpack is a lot heavier than TimeSpy, and it doesn't actually pass it for 5.3. But we're gonna see a similar thing here. I've pre-recorded some numbers for Linpack from some other memory kits. I'm gonna edit them in once we are finished running Linpack here. But the story for Linpack is mostly the same. This kit, although it doesn't look like much, like, to the untrained eye, this looks like your regular C-Die XMP, except that TRCD is like very slightly better. But if you look at the sub-timings, it's pretty decent. The only kind of hard part about this thing is you need to figure out that voltage stability peak. So yeah, like, very specifically 1.26 volts is what my kit needs. If you have a kit like this, yours might have a slightly different voltage sweet spot. So yeah, and like, finding that is a bit hard. I mostly did it, I just set 3600, 18, 22, 22, 42, which is like the regular 3600 cheap kit XMP. And I just kind of like set that and lowered the voltage until it was stable, and that's what brought me to 1.26. And then I started tightening the timings, and then I started doing slight changes to voltages, like a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but then I saw 1.26 is already the best. So yeah. And we're just gonna wait for Linpack to give us our result here. Shouldn't take too long. Let's actually check if it's running. Sometimes it just doesn't run. No, it's running. Yeah, there we are. We have our first result. So 271 gigaflops. Probably similar for the second pass. Actually, this might be a little bit low because we opened Task Manager while it was running. But yeah, like around 270 is where I think I remember this thing scoring. Like the very best Linpack result I got, again out of my high-end B-die, was 304 gigaflops, I think. Well, this one actually scored lower, huh. But yeah, so it's decent performance again. This is not too far off some really, really high-end memory. And that high-end memory costs like 110 euros to get. This costs 65 euros. That's almost half as much. Plus you get RGB if you're into that sort of thing, because that super expensive kit doesn't have RGB. Like, yeah, 271.5 we get to round up on this one. But yeah, like, it's decent. I'm gonna edit in the results for the other kits now, so that's what they perform like. It is, like, it's not quite there up there in the, like, super high performance tier, but it is close enough so that if you're, like, playing games with a kit like this, you probably are not going to feel the difference. If you run benchmarks on this, if you, like, wanna get really high overclocking scores, then yeah, you are gonna be at a disadvantage with this, but if you just use this for gaming, honestly, you are gonna be fine. Like, you still have to put in the time to, like, fully max this kit out. Like, if you look at the XMP result from this kit, it is measurably worse. Like, don't, like, generally, I wouldn't recommend to run any kit at XMP. But specifically kits like this that have, like, only, like, a 3200 XMP. These generally have pretty poor performance at XMP, just like, well, any XMP has pretty poor performance because none of them actually, like, optimize any subtimings. Most of the times it doesn't even touch the subtimings, and when it does, it usually sets them to, like, super safe, super conservative values that are very far from fast. So, yeah. So, like, this is a pretty nice case, I guess. This is a pretty good case for why RAM overclocking does actually matter, because you can get kits like this a lot faster than XMP by putting in the time. And it is quite a lot of time. You probably want to have a weekend free for optimizing, well, not just your RAM kit. If you have an entire weekend, you can optimize your entire PC, but at least, like, a day. You probably want to have at least a day to optimize a RAM kit like this, like, fully. Like, after doing this a couple times, I kind of know what things to set just from a gut feeling, but if you are completely green, if you don't know what timings to set, probably plan a day to do something like this. But it is worth it. Like, the numbers speak for themselves. Like, that's a decent performance jump. Like, that is measurably better. Like, yeah, like, what I always like to say is, if you can get a greater than 7% difference, it's worth it. Because, like, well, I never checked it for myself, but I heard it from somewhere, and it does sound kind of plausible that, like, if your FPS change by less than 7%, you're not really going to notice it unless you have an FPS counter and are actively looking at it. So, yeah, but if you have a difference greater than 7%, your game is going to feel smoother, like it runs faster. So yeah, so, like, whenever you can get more than 7% out of something, I would say it's worth it. And overclocking RAM doesn't really cost you anything except time. Like, it doesn't increase the power draw, it doesn't break anything, it doesn't require any extra things to buy. You just go into your BIOS and you optimize the crap out of your RAM. And the end result of that is this. And yeah, so in the end, I think this RAM kit somewhat redeemed itself. It is far from the thing that I hoped it to be. Like, originally I was planning to like to just put this into my daily system because I was hoping I would just get like regular high clocking B-die in this. But instead I got a kind of interesting new thing, I would like to say. And the performance isn't bad either. It's just like I can't put this in my daily system because I have the old B-die in my daily system, which runs at high voltage, and at high voltage this thing, well, this doesn't even post at XMP anymore if I set 1.5 volts. So, yeah. But the performance is still decent. It's just not really what I was looking for. But, well, I'm not gonna recommend buying this kit if you want to specifically overclock, like overclocking for the sake of overclocking for like getting benchmark scores. But if you want a fast gaming PC and you see one of these Corsair kits that say 4.31 on them, probably worth getting. Like for the price, like 65 euros is what I paid for this. Pretty good performance for 65 euros. Like the only thing that can beat this in value is like these things, my OEM E-die sticks. Like these two cost 25 euros and are even faster, but the thing is, E-die is a 4 gigabit IC, so both of these sticks together is only 8 gigabytes, which isn't really enough anymore today, and you can't really solve that because you're either gonna have to like get 4 sticks, which makes your overclocking worse because now you have dual rank and 4 sticks, which is only really gonna work on a T topology. Obviously doesn't work on a board like this, which only has 2 DIMM slots. Or you're stuck getting dual rank sticks, which I have 2 of, and my motherboard, like the Maximus 9 Apex, absolutely hates them. They do not clock higher than 3200. So yeah, like E-die, a lot easier to clock high in single rank, but that locks you into 8 gigabytes of RAM, which isn't really enough. So when it comes to having like 16 gigabytes, this is a pretty good value. You can probably, you can find proper B-die used on eBay for a similar price. You can find like a 3200 14 on eBay for around the same price. Those will overclock much better than these, but well, as you can see from the results, the performance is not that different. And I guess people just like buying new more than buying used because there's just more peace of mind. So, at the end of the day, I think it is a decent kit. It's just not what I generally call B-die. It's honorary C-die, more like. So, yeah. But enough with my rambles. We are done here, and I thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.